comes up differently on that.
All right, call to order the meeting of the General Government and Finance Committee. This order has been given public notice in accordance with sections 19.83 and 19.84 Wisconsin statutes in such form that will apprise the general public and news media of subject matter that is intended for consideration and action. Roll call, all members present. Welcome, Jan Miller, to the committee.
Thank you very much.
And with that, we will move on to approval of the minutes of April 17th, 2023.
Approval.
Wait a second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. With that, we'll move on to item 4, citizen input. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak? All right, if not, we will move on to new business item A, approval to contract with Northway Fence Company. And with this, is Gil coming for this one? Good.
Motion to approve.
I'll second, but I'd like to hear Gil. Yes.
Well, you don't have to hear me talk if you.
They didn't.
Thank you for having me. I'm coming to you basically with 2 proposals, but they're from the same contractor. A year ago, you guys allowed me to start working on the ball fields at Hopstrasse and Friedenfeld, but I was unable to finish that project last year. I asked for, and you approved monies for this year to have, I'm looking for Northway Fence Company to come over to Friedenfeld baseball field and put in the netting backstop and also construct dugouts for the ball players. That's the first part of the project. Northway came in at $21,200. I sent out 3 requests for proposals. I received 2 bids back, or 2 proposals back. Northway Fence had the lowest at $21,220. Munson Fence came in at $59,853, and Century Fence received a proposal, but they did not submit. So requesting to have Northway Fence Company at $21,200. And this is out of account 40-552-570-8310.
Question, Gil, in the packet, there was another page that for the approval of $10,860.
That is correct. Yes, sir. This one is for the Hopstrasse outfield fence. A lot of the posts have come out of the ground, and the concrete that's holding them in place, he will go in and chip most of all that out, reset the fence, repair any damage to the fence, and reset it to make it to all fit in the ground as it should be. And his proposal to do that was $10,860. Again, Munson Fence proposed for the same project came in at $14,647. And again, Century Fence Company, they did not submit a proposal.
Okay, so these are coming out of the same account that ends in 8310. These are both within budget. These,
Yes,
correct?
sir.
Okay, and we have a motion to approve already. Is there any further discussion?
Just a quick question.
Yeah, Terry.
Gil, this is just part of, like you said, your process where you didn't complete it last year and we're just rolling ahead with your plan.
Yes,
in
ma'am.
place from last year, correct?
Right.
Nothing, no surprises.
No,
Okay.
ma'am.
Right, any further questions, discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Item B, 2023 village employee pay rate chart. Got this, Aaron?
Yep, thank you very much. So this comes before you annually to look at the pay rate scale. We changed the method of how we did this last year by reducing the amount of pay scales there were. However, since 2014, there has been a constant 1.5% increase on this pay scale to make sure that it's still competitive. I did make a mistake, I'm sorry, on this memo sheet. It says that Carlson and Detman were consulting group suggested 2 to 4%. It was actually 3 to 4%. So what I'm requesting in this proposal is that we increase the pay rate scale by 3.5% in order to stay competitive. And like I said, in the past, it's always been 1.5. So we're not changing the method of how we do it, just the slight increase. This does not result in anybody's salary increasing. This is just the scales that you see before you. And then we made some adjustments to some positions that were missing that were not on the scale from last year.
All right, committee.
Motion to approve.
I'll second. I looked at it.
All right, trustee Kaminsky.
There you are.
Yes.
I just want to be sure I understand this. So this
Sure.
is not the same thing that we come to the budget period and say, hey, this year we're going to give everybody a 3% raise.
Correct.
This is just increasing where everybody's at on the scale, that they will automatically go up by, that if we approve this,
No.
No,
they're not going to
Nope.
get extra money.
no,
Okay.
no, this has nothing to do with money.
Okay.
It just has to do with the scale. So when we do go to budget time and we do increase people's wages,
So this will reflect on hopefully a better increase for these people because.
not necessarily, not necessarily. This is just
Potential.
making sure that their position
Right.
is within a scale that
that's
is
Justified and correct.
justified. Yep.
So
Mhm.
it could potentially, for those who are like not in the correct place right now,
Potentially,
would help them hopefully.
but approving this will not determine that at all.
Okay, I think we absolutely need to do this. I think we have to keep up and I'm totally in favor of this.
All right, trustee Jan Miller.
Question, so is this increase to the 3.5 to 4, is that good for just 1 year or is this?
Correct. So annually, like I said before, since 2014, annually, the pay scales have increased by 1.5%. This year, I'm just asking it to be increased by 3.5% instead. So next year, we will probably go on that same path of 1.5%, but I'm just asking for an increase of 3.5 this year so that we stay competitive.
Okay, to get up to scale.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
So a couple questions, Aaron. So
Sure.
in this scaling, and I know we adjusted it last year and actually reduced the number of pay rates
Right.
or pay ranges, not ranges. No, what's the proper word?
Pay scales.
Pay
Yep.
scales.
Or pay ranges. Yeah.
How's it determined, like, who fits in each pay scale?
So when we did that last year, it was determined on what categories they fell in the prior scale. So those categories then, there were a lot that were just slightly different, by, a couple hundred here, a couple hundred there. And so we then took those and reduced them from, I think it was like 28 or something like that,
Mhm.
to 8. So it was quite a lot of pay scales there were. It was almost as if each job had its own pay scale. So
There was
instead,
quite a few.
so instead we kind of categorized them more. So like all the administrative assistants were put in the same category, all the clerks were put in the same category. It was more,
And then as far as existing employees in that, it really doesn't affect them because that is based on what we decide at budget time or any time that we decide on what the pay rate is going to be or that type of thing.
correct.
But how does this affect them at all? What does this represent then as far as the scales itself?
It just, represents what they're supposed to be in for their position. So they're supposed to be in between these two salaries.
Within the low and the high, somewhere in
Right,
there.
the low end, yep, mhm.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and so it's a pay scale, and so it gives a little more flexibility too when hiring somebody. It's not, it's this and it's not moving. Especially with the economy right now, you can't really do that. It has to be kind of flexible. And so this helps in that area as well. Yes,
Okay.
Does this affect the 3.5? We're talking about a scale, a range.
a range, correct,
So does it move the low end and the high end then?
correct, yes.
Yes,
Yeah, it just keeps ratcheting.
ratcheting.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're
Yeah, Terry?
Just to be sure I understand it correctly. So this really is important because if there are some people that are way at the low end right now, I mean,
Mhm.
like why are they working here on the low end? This will move that pay range up to something that's more reasonably competitive with surrounding communities.
Mhm.
And so so they may end up getting a bump.
Yeah.
They'd have to bring that.
That would
back
have to be considered first.
committee again and say, hey, we think these people are too low for their range or whatever, and then we consider that and vote on it.
And the reason to do this mid-year is because then we'll start budget discussions and then this will be involved in that. Yes.
All right. Got a lot of questions. We have a motion on the table. Is there any other discussion or questions? If not, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll move on to unfinished business. Item A, American Rescue Plan Act. Matthew, I believe you're taking this.
Yeah. In your packet is a memo with an update regarding the expenditures of the American Rescue Plan Act funds. Since we last presented this in January, there haven't been many changes. The largest change being the expenses for the library condenser, which that project is currently underway and should be wrapping up within the next few weeks, where you will see the remaining invoices be charged to that account. The largest outstanding buckets, if you will, is the road paving. There's about 80,000 allocated for the Maple Lannon project there, which will match what was required by the feds for that grant. And then the other remaining bucket is the $500,000 for building improvements. Other than that, most of the projects have been completed, less the Pro Phoenix upgrade, which is also underway.
Okay, are there any questions for Matt? Changed anything the last time? Sorry, we really haven't changed anything since the last time we discussed this.
No, the only major expenditure was the beginning of the library condenser
Mhm.
project.
And that was already approved.
Correct.
Before that.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, trustee Jan Miller.
We have a tourism commission and we have Celebrate Germantown and MyFest. So that's the 4th of July and MyFest. Is that for last year or this year?
That was for last year. That's for 2022.
And combined they were, or does this include MyFest coming up?
Nope, that was year to date. From my recollection, that only includes last year. There hasn't been any expenses charged for the ARPA portion of
Oh,
the
okay.
tourism commission. They may have spent other funds dedicated to
Sure.
them, but
Okay.
related to ARPA,
Yeah, there was an amount that was given to the
To the-
tourism commission
that's
and
what
then
I
the
thought.
tourism commission decided what to allocate for each one of
All
those
right.
events.
This was the ARPA. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions? Great, thank you, Matthew. With that, we'll move on to unfinished business. Item B, Police Department non-represented employee salaries.
Thank you. I've come back with some of the information that you requested. There is a spreadsheet that was prepared by Matthew, which shows, and I just lost the daggone thing. Here it is. Shows the positions that I'm talking about. The 3 lieutenants, the dispatchers, the clerks' positions. shows their current wage, the proposed wage, and the impact that will have along with, when you include those benefit costs along with that. Shows the cost for the remainder of 2023. That's an assumption that would begin at the beginning of June, and then what that would mean going forward. As I stated the last time, I just feel that I understand what I'm asking here. I do. I just feel with the current climate, what we're seeing with our own staff, I just want to be able to retain people past the age of 50, because that's just a ton of years of experience that we're losing out on. I'd like to see us be competitive with other dispatch agencies. County's top pay is at 32. Ozaki's closer to 39. Milwaukee's in the area of 32. This brings us back to a point where we're competitive. We hit that full staffing in dispatch. We had a dispatcher that was contemplating going to West Bend Mutual. I don't know that this impacted that dispatcher's decision at all, but I think that they are encouraged that that we are discussing this. I think that's helped, and I think we just have to. I think it's important that we find a way to get this done. We are losing people to other agencies. And this is not even talking about the sworn positions. That's another challenge with all the bonuses out there. But this is something I think is important that we start getting closer to our comparables. What I showed here are Metro Milwaukee areas, agencies our size, and just getting our staff to the point where they're closer to those numbers. So I would certainly address any questions or comments you may have.
Yeah, and Chief, remind us again how this would be funded for the rest of the year before the next budget.
For the remainder of this year?
Yeah.
These are some of the things that we had discussed, but we do have, it's a challenge. We do have a certain amount of funds available from an officer position that is vacant, dispatchers positions that had went vacant. But we also have increased overtime costs that are hard to predict.
Mhm.
So these costs that we're looking at are, I understand that we still have to find ways to get these numbers addressed. But I'm bringing you forward what I think are realistic numbers to start looking at for our people.
And just to follow up on that, the likely source of funding would be fund balance.
Sure. So there most likely is enough within the budget to cover this for 2023.
No, it would be likely using fund balance reserves.
Ah.
So what we have in reserve for the remainder of the year, we would allocate that 64,000 and then build the 132,000 into the 2024 budget. So you would be.
But if there is salary, if there's money available that's under budget right now in the salary, that would be used first, wouldn't it?
Correct.
Terry, do you have a question?
Couple of questions. I wasn't here for the public safety meeting, obviously, but what is going on with the potential referendum to really start remedying some of our problems with our police and fire? Does anybody know?
Administrator can probably answer that because he gave his presentation.
'Cause I mean, to me, that's a starting point because we're going to keep throwing little patches on this. We need big money.
We did have an item on the Public Safety Committee agenda that went through alternatives. And I think there was a good discussion at the committee. I think it's safe to say that the committee didn't like any of the alternatives that were available. They did ask that it come back next month with some additional information about the potential for increased shared revenue from the state. And my recommendation to the Public Safety Committee and the village board is that we start the process of moving forward with a referendum for April of 2024.
Good. I feel more comfortable putting patches on things when I know that there's some hope. There's a light at the end of the tunnel because there is, in my mind, after reviewing everything we have and looking at what other communities across this state, probably across the country, are doing, they are all turning to referendums because we cannot raise property taxes enough to cover the public safety needs we have in this community or in any community. So I mean, I agree with Chief. I think we have to do something about this. And I am rarely would I ever say I'm comfortable with doing something like taking this money out of reserve because you never use reserve money. You have to use money that's going to continue to come in, thus property taxes
Right.
or a referendum. But to put a patch on this, when I look at these numbers, seriously, thank you for staying. And thank your staff for staying. This is a serious problem and we have to fix it.
Trustee Jan Miller?
I, Steve also shared with us that there is legislation right now for state funding for police and fire. So it's looking
Good.
good.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons we wanted to postpone it was to get more information because it should come up for a vote before the next meeting, maybe.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I think that's great because what I've been following on that too, and as you know, Dan Knodl's on
Right,
that committee
he's
and everything
right,
now.
yeah.
Even if we did get miraculously some nice lump sum payment, you can then do the shell game where, okay, we do all of, because even if they earmark it towards staff, they're not going to pay for it indefinitely. You're going to be lucky if you get a year or two, maybe, but you still have to come up with the money ultimately. Unless you play the shell game and you put all the other out-of-pocket costs into, if they allow you, into whatever money they give you, then you freed up money for staff. We have to see
But
how that money would come in.
I don't know what you mean by out of pocket. You mean other than personnel?
Just out-of-pocket expenses versus personnel, because if they're not going to cover personnel for more than 1 year, we're in the same position we are now without a referendum.
I'll send you some information. They're talking about in perpetuity, basically,
Until
till the next.
until you get a new governor or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's a start.
Trustee Myers?
Motion to approve
Second. What are we approving? Just moving this on village
Um,
board?
funding.
Yeah, this would have to go to village board for final.
Village board.
Which is-
But the motion to.
Aaron.
approve it-
Hold on. Aaron, do you have some question, comment?
No, I just wanted to bring up too that just so you know, the rate scale that you just approved, though, some of these positions would be out of their rate scale then. So just keeping that into consideration, they would be in if we did 4% instead of 3.5, but with the 3.5, they would be outside of their rate scales, or at least half the positions. Not all of the positions, but half of the
How
positions.
much of a problem is this, Steve?
I think
We
that's
can
something.
always adjust or do whatever.
We can
need.
adjust going forward. I don't think that's an issue to.
No, but that's something to
stop
consider.
This process, either for the pay ranges or for the adjustments that are before you.
And I'm also thinking that, who made the motion? You, Dennis? Are you just approving this? Or you're going to talk about the funding coming out of reserves for the
They talked
first year?
about the funding in regard to the positions and so on. And then Matthew gave the secondary aspect, which would be from, what did you call it, Matthew?
It'd be coming out of fund balance reserves.
The reserves. Just,
Reserve.
that has to be part of the motion, obviously.
Right.
Yeah, so at the high side, out of the fund balance reserve would be for 2023, 64,195.36. What this tells us though is that, wages aren't going to go back down. So we are accepting this and have to find the money for the budget in 2024.
Yeah, and we have to, like
Yeah.
you said, hang our hope on a few things. But we have to, you look at these numbers, I mean, we have to do something.
Administrator Krecklow.
And I know I'm kind of preaching to the choir on this, and this is a challenge to try to figure out how to fund this in 2024. It's a big chunk to bite off and commit to, but, when I go over to the police department and, the turnover and the number of new officers that we have, that have joined the police force over the past few years is very significant. I don't know if it's a third but you walk in, you see a lot of new young faces. And I think making sure that we keep the command staff in place to mentor them and train them is really critical.
Yeah, Terry?
I mean, I totally agree, and I think you look at what's happening with crime. I mean, almost even just since COVID, it's like COVID hit everybody's brain. There are so many more horrible things happening in communities like ours that if we do not prepare ourselves and maintain a competent staff to handle these things, then we're really failing our constituents.
Absolutely. So when this comes to the village board, will you have an adjusted number then? We're approving the 64,195.36 or the 4%, Aaron, that you mentioned.
That's something different.
Is that something different?
That's.
Or-
that's pay scale.
Oh, that's the pay
What
scale.
were you originally-
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I was talking about the pace.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to know if it was going to change. Thank you.
So we have a motion to move this forward to the village board with a positive recommendation. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. With that, we'll move on to reports. Monthly financial summary, accounts payable from April 21st, 22nd, 28th, and May 5th. Any questions, any comments? Yeah, Terry? Oh, I thought you raised your hand, sorry.
No.
Um,
Nothing jumped out, let's put it that way.
oh,
Have any questions, Jan?
I had well, I do have a question. I don't know if this occurs all the time, but toward the end of the report, there are items that are undefined code. Can you explain that?
Yeah, could you give me the page number? If I can look at it.
Approximately, 186
Got it.
and then beyond. Yeah,
186.
Cliff Notes.
Yep, so that happens in our general ledger. Typically, that's when you create new accounts, expense counts or revenue counts. If they're not tied back properly to their class code or object code, it'll come up as undefined. I can correct that in our general ledger system.
I'd appreciate that.
Yep.
All right, nothing on accounts payable. Year-to-date budget comparisons. I think that was what you were just looking at.
Oh, I'm
right?
sorry. Got ahead of myself.
That's all right. Budget versus actual. If there's nothing on that, we will move on to setting our next meeting. The next meeting typically would be Monday, June 19th at 6 PM. Is that okay with the committee? Right. With that, we'll schedule it for Monday, June 19th, 6 PM in this boardroom. And with that, we will adjourn. Thank you.
Anyhow, this is contracting. I've talked to Steve in regard to it, and so $1,000 budget. So. Dollars of 14.
So there's
In the German.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, and so that money will go, you